Hello and welcome to my new YouTube channel, Built by Ben. Today's video got a little bit messed up because of the footage that was lost. We ran out of battery and I didn't realise, so some of the carcass build was lost. The bit of the carcass build that was lost was just the bottom of the unit, so all you do for this is cut a square to fit the bottom of the unit and then just pocket screw it in around the perimeter on the underneath. Hopefully that won't affect the video too much. I hope you enjoy it. If you are enjoying what you're watching, please like and subscribe. That will help me out massively. Thank you. So I just had to swap over cameras quickly to show you the trend pocket hole jig. This is what I've been using to do pocket holes recently. Absolutely brilliant bit of kit. So the pocket holes that we want to do are in the end of this piece of wood here and in that end as well. So the idea of this is that we hang that over the edge very slightly. Difficult to do whilst holding the camera. Pocket hole jig then clamps to the end like this. There's a small clamp underneath. And then we use this drill bit, which has got a depth stop already on there. It comes in the box. And that goes through this hole here, all the way in. Obviously the depth stop then stops it at the right moment, and that's ready for a pocket screw. This particular jig has two entry holes here. It's really handy for thin bits like this because you don't have to move it. So we'll go in one into this hole and one into this hole, and that'll be ready to fix. Take the clamp off, and there we go. Some nice pocket holes ready for some square drive screws. They pop in there and we just screw them into the piece when we're ready. Okay, so we run out of battery at the end of day one, so we're now on day two of the project. All I did was fitted the top rail to the carcasses, which I'll show you in a minute. So on day two, we're going to be doing the worktop, or the top of the unit, to link them all together. So the first thing to do is to show you the top rail so that you didn't miss out on that part. Okay, so this is one of the carcasses with the top rail fitted. As you can see, it's fairly simple, that 150mm by 1030 that we spoke about before. All that's going to do is just provide some strength for this corner and that top corner there, stop the thing wobbling. And then once that worktop goes across all three of them, you screw up through this into the worktop. That keeps all three of the units together, nice and solid, with nice strong units, and the doors will never move because none of the carcass can move. So all we've done to fix this top rail here is use the pocket screw jig. We've kept the pocket screw holes on the top of the top rail. So obviously the underneath is your good side. If someone ever opens up the cupboard and looks up, they're going to see this bit. So you want to keep this bit here underneath the worktop, sandwiched in between, never to be seen again. So that's that. Okay, so we've got all three carcasses against the wall here, clamped them all together so that any measurements we take across the top are going to be sort of an as fitted size. Obviously they'll all be screwed together eventually, so it's good to just get them nice and tight whilst we make these measurements across the top for the worktop, so that they're as accurate as they can be. The worktop on this one has got to finish dead flush with the edge of the cabinets, because we're going to have a light that goes all the way around the outside. We don't want a little bump where the worktop is, because it will distort the lights, and the lights will show up differently on the wall at that point. So for the depth of the worktop, you can't forget that we've got the doors to go on the front of here, which are 18mm, and then we've got a bit of clearance behind them as well. You get your little rubber dot that stops them shutting and making a noise. So you get about 3mm behind them. So we've already got 21mm that we've got to allow for on the depth of the worktop. And then you want to add about another 50mm for scribing at the back, which I'll explain once we're on site. But if the wall has a bow or a bump or a dip in it, then we need plenty of meat to be able to jigsaw the back of that worktop to make it meet the wall as tight as possible. So we leave about 75mm overall, should do it, that should cover the doors and the scribe, and then we do the depth, the accurate depth measurements on site later on. So all we want to do for now is just measure the length and get cutting that. So here we go. So to measure the length of the worktop, we quite simply go across the back of all 3 units, which is 3202. And then at this point, it's a good idea just to check the front. It's 3202 as well. That just confirms that you've built them all nice and square. If you're out by more than sort of 3 or 4mm, then you need to start thinking, where have I gone wrong here? Try and find the fault and correct it. So it's always good to check as you build things so that you can avoid a lot of work later on. So all we're going to do now is cut the worktop. It's got to be in 2 separate pieces because it's too long for a sheet of MDF. A sheet of MDF is 2440 and we've got 3202. So we'll probably do a halfway split on this, join them on the centre, and I'll show you how that's done now. Okay, so we've put our rail back together for this long cut. We know that the depth of the units at the bottom there are 500, so we want that initial 500 plus the 75mm for the doors and the scribe at the back. So we need 2 strips at 575, and then we'll cut the length, and then we'll have a go at joining them together. Now on the second cut, we'll then measure from the back edge, because that's what I call a factory edge. We know that that is exactly square. Mine might be half a mil off because I'm doing it on site with a rail. So if we use that other side, we know that that's square, and then we've got the best possibility of joining them together as tight as possible and then still being straight at the front. Okay, so we now need to cut the length for these. So we need our 3202, which was the length of the 3 units put together, and then we need to half that, which is 1601. So we need to cut both of these at 1601 length, and then we need to join them in the middle using the biscuit joiner, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so using the 2 cut sides as the front of our worktop, because they're the nice sort of compressed, freshly cut edges, we need to line them 2 up. So we just check that they're nice and flush with each other, which they are. If they're not, you can always just put the difference at the back here, because we've still got to scribe that to the wall once we're on site. So just keep this front edge nice and flush. We want that to be the finished product ready to paint. So you've got to keep this edge protected at all times, even in transport. And then once that's fitted on site, you should just be able to give it a quick sand over. If the customer wants, we can router this front edge, but normally we just sand them, which is called taking the sharp off, just so that the paint goes over the corner nicely. If you don't sand the sharp off and you just paint straight onto that, you'll find that the paint just doesn't stick to it. You'll see the MDF shining through right on the corner. You need to make nice, smooth corners everywhere for the paint to do its best. So here, we've got a Makita biscuit joiner. All it does, in essence, is just puts a blade into the material, and then these here, which we call a biscuit for obvious reasons, pushes into that slot in both pieces of material. So what you're getting is that about halfway down your material. So it's completely hidden, and what that stops is the material, when it reacts under different heats, you won't get any movement up and down. So we put 3 biscuits, maybe even 4 in this case, because we definitely don't want that coming apart. But 4 biscuits down that worktop, and then on the underneath we'll then use the pocket screw again to go from each side, probably about 5 of them, to almost stitch it together and pull it all together. And then when we're on site, we'll chuck a load of glue down there, pop the biscuits in, screw it together, and that'll be in its final position then. We can screw it all to the carcasses, and that can stay there for good. So we're just going to line the front of both bits, line them up very nicely so that you can barely feel a bump there when you run your finger over it. And then we're just going to sketch. You want to place the biscuit there, make sure you're not too close to the edge, because you never want that to happen. We're just going to make a mark roughly where I marked that before, and you run your mark between both bits of material, and then you know that when you take them away, we're going to cut one of the holes here, one of the holes here, and they'll line up exactly. So we want to do 1, 2, 3 and 4. So now we can move this piece away. That gives us room for our biscuit joiner. So for this we just want to hang it over the edge so that we've got no obstructions. It's also good practice just to get a clamp somewhere on the material, which I'll put up the other end there. Okay, so we're all plugged in, we've got the hoover attached, and what you can see here is the depth gauge. I don't know if that's focusing in, but we've set that to 9 because obviously we want that to be halfway down our 18mm sheet. And then what we've got is a line here with a hole so that you can see your pencil mark. All we do is we line that up. You're safe to hold your fingers here, because what we don't want is any rocking as we go into the material. If we get that, then obviously your biscuit then goes in at an angle and doesn't line up with the other piece. So we want to line that up with our pencil mark, keep our 2 fingers here, and then you haven't got to worry too much about what you're doing with this hand. All you've got to do with that one is just push that into the material nice and carefully. Make sure that goes all the way home. So you've also got a setting here, which corresponds to the number on your biscuits. So these biscuits here, doesn't say it on that one, these biscuits here have got a number 20 on them, so you set this gauge to number 20, and then we're ready to go. So we'll turn the hoover on, line it up, and you can see how that works. can see with that, we've got a nice biscuit in there. It's in fairly tight, and then when you've added the glue to that, popped your biscuit in, and then put the other piece of material up to that, it's a very, very strong junction. And then with the added pocket screws underneath to pull that all together, it shouldn't go anywhere. Okay, so we've now got both pieces of worktop with the biscuit holes put in them. What we want to do now is we want to set this pocket hole jig up, and we want to be putting a screw where there isn't a biscuit. So we'll probably put one here, yeah, and here. But these two here, what we'll actually do is put them on this piece, and then we can sort of stitch it together, pull it in from both ends. Be a lot stronger that way. Okay, so they're now ready. We've got 3 screws in this side, 2 in that side. They can be flipped back over and put back on the carcasses, just temporarily for now. We don't want to screw anything down, but then we can then start planning how we're going to go over the top of the telly with the units.